Okay.
Hey, welcome to Detroit in Black and White, our Wednesday edition. Alan Langle, co-founder of Deadline Detroit. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Cold Wednesday night. It started out warm, and then suddenly it was freezing out
And
there.
now it's back to whatever it's going to be.
Right.
Jim Nardoni, ex-police chief, Trenton.
Good evening. It is cold. Winter's back.
Well, your sister city in New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey. I've been there. Saw their capital.
Oh, that's right.
And not
You
a
know,
place
you know all the
you can do 1 or 2 days there.
Can you name every capital of every state?
Yeah, and when I named every capital of every state in the 5th grade, Jeff Sachs named every capital in the world and the countries. So I had to go back and look in some encyclopedias that we were in Camp Tamarack, 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
I knew all the capitals of the U.S.
Uh-huh.
He knew all the capitals of the rest of the world.
Right. Jeff Sachs, we went to high school with, who's now like a world-renowned economist. I don't know if he's at Princeton or one of the Ivy League.
He's at Columbia, I think.
Columbia, okay.
Yeah, he's at Columbia.
He did consulting for Poland when they were transitioning to capitalism and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, they're good if we can get him on.
Yeah. All right, I'll try to. I mean, his sister, I have some contacts with.
Well, that's good.
All right, sounds good. So we want to talk about your book, which I'd love to hear more about. It's called Front Row, which
front row seat.
Front Row Seat, and tell us how you came to name it that, and what's the origin.
Well, you remember Tom Hanks and what's his most famous movie?
The most famous. They talk about the baseball movie or the Private Ryan.
No, the Goofy movie, but it was his best.
Wasn't it in a TV show where they were dressed
of chocolates?
Yeah. Forrest Gump. That was
Forrest Gump. In that movie, you see Forrest Gump he was with the President Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson.
Right.
He was with all the things that changed America.
Right.
He was there.
Uh-huh.
Well, the last 4 mayors of this city changed the landscape of Detroit. Mm-hmm. I was there.
All right.
I happened to meet the 2 that was before Coleman Young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll tell you, that's what my 30 years, 40 years. It seemed like it's been a long time.
And so, what is the book? What basically is it? Just
it's about how I got started in politics.
Okay.
And it all started back in our old favorite high school and junior high school in Oak Park, Michigan. Talk about myself and some of the things that stood out when I was a student.
Uh-huh.
And, when I went up to U of M, and then how I got to be involved in the political scene in Detroit.
And what was there political aspirate? I can't remember. I was with you in junior high and high school.
High school, I won the student mayor for Oak Park when the first time they let township students participate. They wouldn't let us participate in the elections because we didn't live in Oak Park. Mm-hmm. But I had to tell a teacher one time, why can't we go to the swimming pool across the street? You had to be a resident, etc. And when I said, we helped build that, how? I said, because back in 1958, when the township became just predominantly Black as other cities in Oakland County incorporated to become cities, Royal Oak, Berkeley, Oak Park, Madison Heights was the last city.
Mm-hmm.
1957. It used to be Royal Oak Township. They left one part on 8 Mile Road. The other part was on 10 Mile Road in Greenfield. At the time, people thought it was Oak Park, but it was Royal Oak Township. Because they would know if you went to some of those stores that sold liquor, you knew you wasn't in Oak Park, because at that time Oak Park was what, a dry city.
Yeah, for sure.
Royal Oak Township didn't have a high school. They sent their kids to Detroit. Usually, when the cities were incorporating in Oakland County, they let students from other cities, until they build their own high school, go to those schools. But since this was a predominantly black district, so to speak, they wouldn't take them. Ferndale, which had admitted black students since 1890, said we got our quota. So Detroit said the township owed $100 and some thousand, and they didn't want the students anymore. So the governor of the state of Michigan, G. Minnie Williams, came down to Oakland County, in the only city, and he made a deal with Oak Park. He said, if you take the township kids, I don't know what they gave Oak Park. All I know, one of the conditions was a special tax on Northland that Oak Park got every year, the school district. So when I told the teacher, we belong there, and she said, well, I guess you're right. If that's true, yeah, it's true. And so that senior year, I was able to run I ran as a joke. I told people to write me in, and guess what? I won. But anyway, it was a good experience. But you know, that's some of the stuff that I had to face as a student. Martin Luther King was, and we were in the 7th, 8th grade, 68. When we went to school, we asked the principal, could we have an assembly, whatever, and he said no. You can't, this is about education. So we walked out. There was about 25 black students at Clinton Junior High. And when I came back to school the next day, I'm the only one that's going to get kicked out of school. I said, why? I had to bring my parents, because you're the only one that didn't come back from the threats. I said, I wasn't coming back, so I didn't get kicked out. But a month later, when Robert Kennedy got killed, they had an assembly for Robert Kennedy, and then I walked out and went home and walked home. I said they couldn't do that for King. Why they doing it for Bobby Kennedy? But you know, those are some of the stuff. I don't know if it made it in the book, but those are some of the things I thought about when I started writing it.
Okay. And so can we expect to read about some titillating things, or is it just very straightforward? I mean, is there some stuff where people are going to go, holy shit?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. You know, how Granholm became governor. I have to give Jeff Feiger a pat on the back, because he really didn't want to. And it talks about how a vote in a bar put on the ticket. More than 5 people was drunk that voted for it. It had to be.
And can I say hello to our viewers, Adolph? Terry McCrimmon's asking about the mega economy. Nobody's very happy about gas prices, for sure. And there's True Sensation, our good friend. Hello to you. Good evening, Felicia. G Money said, talk to him. We're talking to you. We're talking about, he's asking about down payment assistance. And Karen worked for the city under the mayor. The mayor's through the Duggan administration. Karen was with the city for a long time. G Money, we're going to talk what we're doing tonight. There was another question. Forrest Gump, sure. Share, Janet, thank you. Hello, Edward. Again, hello. Derek Henry, good to see you. Time for the best show on these YouTube streets. Good evening. Good evening, Derek. Good to see you, Deborah Harris. There was another question, but what we're doing tonight, I think it was something about the bus situation. What we're doing tonight is we're interviewing Adolph Mongo, our fearless leader, founder of Detroit in Black and White, from his radio program to today. He's written a book. It's called A Front Row Seat. And if you have some questions about the book, hello, Dorian, fire them off to us. And we're going to be talking to Adolph. We're going to get my questions. Adolph, I want to know how, you say a front row seat. What year? How did you were on another show, Charlie LaDuff show, an excellent interview, but he was talking about vodka and tingling ice cubes in a glass. My question is, how did you find these people like Coleman Young? How did your first initial meeting go with Coleman Young? How did your first initial meeting go with Kwame Kilpatrick and anybody else?
The first meeting with Coleman Young, I didn't know Coleman Young. I was a newspaper reporter in a little town outside of Kalamazoo, South Haven. I came back from Maryland, and I liked somebody, and she was living in Kalamazoo. So I went to Kalamazoo, and I'm reading the paper, the Gazette, say job at South Haven for newspaper. I'm like, South Haven. Went there, interviewed. What?
Had you heard of South Haven before? Or?
Yeah, Al Capone used to have a summer home in South Haven. They used to bring the liquor from Michigan, from Detroit, Windsor to Detroit through South Haven. But now it's a big resort town. When I was there, it had seen its better days. And I got
it was a big Jewish
yes,
vacation spot. I went there when I was 5 years old with my parents.
And they still got quite a bit, the population. But anyway, I got the job. I don't think nobody else wanted it.
Huh.
And
what was it paying? What were you getting?
Nothing. Zero. I had to use the little savings I had to stay up that way. But it was but I'm glad I did. I was there. I seen a lot, did a lot. But I was coming back to Detroit. The Association of Black Journalists had a conference at the Old Book Cadillac before they mothballed it. And Coleman Young was there holding a press conference, and I'm there with some other reporters. Now, I wasn't invited there, but I went anyway. Mm-hmm. And I asked them a question. It had to be about a couple hundred people in where we were. Bob Berg, remember Bob Berg?
Yes.
So we got one more question. So I raised my hand. He pointed to me. I said, Mr. Mayor, who cut your hair? He started laughing. I said, looks nice. Everybody looked at me like, why am I asking the mayor this? He said, oh, Diane Mongo. He said, who are you? I said, Adolph Mongo. Oh, you're Larry's brother. What paper you work for? I told him I was up in Kalamazoo. He said, you need to be down here in Detroit. Because I forgot but he was taking a dig at the reporters. And guess what? He said, here's my card, call my secretary, Bernice, because I want you back here. Of course, I called her, and it wasn't nothing. I didn't hear from her for a couple months. I came back to Detroit. I said, I did some writing for the Chronicle. I was at the Chronicle, got a call from the mayor's office. He knew I was at the Chronicle. I had been writing stories, and said, the mayor want to see you. I said, well, I need to go home and change, because I was at tennis shoes, jeans. Said, nope, come night now. So I went down to the city county building, and they said, don't go upstairs, just go to his limo, gonna be in the parking lot. Got in the limo, and they drove over to Cobo Hall. Tommy Hearns, they was previewing Tommy Hearns' championship bout in Detroit.
Wow.
And everybody there had on tuxedos, the black tie affair. I'm sitting there standing out, and he's dealing with the press, and somebody in one of the reporters said, "Who is that guy standing next to you?" He said, "That's my new deputy director of public information," and that's how that was the
So you
interview.
got the job?
That was the interview. Never spoke to her.
So what year was that? Was that the Pepino Cuevas
84.
fight?
That was 84. Yeah, somewhere 83. Yeah.
Wow, quite a story.
Somewhere around August or September.
So you just showed up. He knew your brother. So sometimes the family name has the name was.
But I've been a reporter before, yeah.
Well, you had the credentials, but it didn't hurt to have the mayor know your family.
No, it sure didn't.
And how'd you like working for Coleman? Was he tough to work?
I like him. He was straight up. And in the first week, and this is in the book, the first week when first 2 weeks, somebody gave me their resume. I didn't know the person, didn't know the woman. And he called me. I was somewhere having lunch. A pager went off, a little beep, beep, beep. I go to the payphone, call back to the office, said, "The mayor's looking for you." So I go back to the office, and he calls me. And he said, "How you like your new job, all this?" I said, "It's fine and stuff." And he said, "You sent me the resume of this so-and-so, so-and-so." I said, "Yeah." He said, I'm not going to say what he really said. I'll just paraphrase it. He says, "That's your woman," basically, but he used other language. And I said, "No, I don't even know her." He said, "Well, I know her." He said, "She's crazy. She worked for the city. I promoted her 3 times. You know who her daddy is? He getting on my damn nerves. He's calling me every fucking day for this position." He said, "But is that your woman?" I said, "No." He said, "Okay. I think I'm going to fire her ass," and hung up the phone. So I'm like, whew. That's it. I'm talking to the mayor. He got more, should be having more important things to do than worry about who's getting this little funky job and shit. But that was him.
And what you saw him over the years, how did he change, do you think, in terms of his power and his mindset and his influence? How do you think?
Well, I came in there in 84. He had been in there since 74. He'd been in there 10 years.
Right.
I stayed 8 years. He should have left when I left. But but when you're the mayor of a city like that, and you got a group of folks that you've been taking care of, and he did that for 20 years. It's the same with Mike Duggan. Got a group of people that he took from the county to the prosecutor's office to DMC to the city. And if he wins, he's going to take that core group. So he said, "I feed a lot of people." Even when he was sick and got emphysema on oxygen. I remember going down to Manuga and used to have the TV and the radio playing at the same time, and he was smoking and drinking. And you look over in the corner, there's a oxygen tank. But the guy was great. Campaigning with him. One Sunday morning, we was going to churches. I was sitting out in the back seat with him. We passed an alley. In the alley, it was in the wintertime. There was a group of men around a garbage can. It was burning, and they were smoking cigarettes. He went. Got out. We got out. They were like, "Coleman." Some of them knew him. Coleman. He pulled out a pack of cigarettes, gave it to one person, said, "Keep it." And then they passed a little bottle of wine. They were drinking wine. And he took a hit.
He took a hit.
The mayor. He took a hit and got back in the car.
So should we take a break?
He was the kind of mayor that would go to a church that had 10 members.
Tell us why, Adolph.
Because he said that's where he said those 10 people, when I come there, they better than Channel 2 and Channel 4 and Channel 7 News, because they spread the word. And he was dead on the money.
Mm-hmm.
So should we take a break? And G Money is back in that time frame. He remembers those days as I do, G Money, and we're trying to put ourselves. Your book is putting us back in a place that seems so unfamiliar to us today. I want to ask you, Adolph, when we get back, about Coleman Young's relationship with L. Brooks Patterson, and was it really what the press portrayed? Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Made it out to be. Should we take a break?
Yeah, take a break. Be back.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
We're back. Yeah, Jim, you had a question.
Yes, I just, the only time I ever saw L. Brooks Patterson ever around town, he seemed to be in Detroit. And I'm just wondering if the relationship they had was nowhere like the press made it out to be.
Well, L. Brooks Patterson was a fucking bigot, but he was a straight shooter. There's no question. And he was in awe of the mayor. And I'll tell you why. I went to Rome. I had a ticket to go to Atlanta, and my flight got canceled. And I had enough money on that ticket that I can get a ticket to Rome, because my wife was taking this girl's daughter trip to another part of Europe. So I said, I'll just go to Rome. Never been to Rome. I'm waiting on a flight out of Amsterdam. And we're getting on there. Here come all these drunken people coming late. It was L. Brooks Patterson and his group of folks were on the plane, loud and stuff. They've been drinking. Get on the plane. I walked past it. Al Brooks Patterson. He knew who I was. Boom. So get in Rome. I go to my hotel. Guess who's standing in line to check in? Al Brooks Patterson and the gang. So I got to talk. I saw him in the bar. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna go sightseeing. I sat there in the bar with them, and didn't leave there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because they drank and drank and drank. And he talked about the mayor. He said, "I respect the mayor. I don't hate the mayor, but I'm pro Oakland County, just like." The mayor is pro Detroit, and we all want to see Detroit. So we had those little debates and stuff. I think a lot of it is, he knew how to hang with the mayor, but the mayor never backed down. It's like later in life, I had lunch with Pete Wallmeyer. Yeah, listen, he respected the hell out of Coleman Young. Mm-hmm. He said the guy he said he was a son of a bitch, but you knew where you stood. And he said, but the thing he remembered the most about Coleman Young, him and Bill Bonds were in the same room. It was a reception, and the mayor had to speak. And he said the mayor came up and said, "Damn, I must be in hell, because here's Bill Bonds on my right and Pete Wallmeyer on my left." You know, they thought it was funny, but hey, that was the mayor. Never
Did he-
back.
Did he like any reporters? Were there any reporters that he actually had some fondness for? Or
Besides
Yeah.
Adolph Mongo?
Well, you know what? Listen, to him, all the reporters were the enemies until if you work for him. Bob Berg was a reporter, you know, but one thing he didn't like Chauncey Bailey. You know, the late Chauncey Bailey from Detroit News, who was black, and he just hated them. You know, I think that was real. And I tried to tell him, I said, Chauncey just doing his job. You know, they didn't want to hear that. Oh, you come from that profession. Yeah, I did, but I know everybody don't hate the city.
Right. He used to call Bruce Alpert, who worked at Detroit News, who was from New York originally. He'd say, "There's the motherfucker from the Detroit News."
The one that he really hated was Gary Baumgarten from WWJ. And Baumgarten, now I remember when they was setting fires during Devil's Night,
right?
And I'm out next to Gary Baumgarten. He was on the air saying, "Live, the block is burning down," and there was a house, and the fire was no big deal. You know, so yeah, he threw a microphone at Gary Baumgarten.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, he said, "If I could get that son of a bitch, I would have."
Yeah,
we have a couple of comments. It wasn't L. Brooks Patterson, KKK. Good evening to Mary Kemet. Good to see you.
L. Brooks Patterson used Irene McCabe, who was the leader of the parent group that didn't want busing, and that's how he was an unknown attorney that put him in the spotlight. And when he got elected prosecutor, he dropped her. He ran from her. He didn't want to be around her. Mm-hmm. When he got in trouble, he went and hired Albert Hatcher, who was African American, as his attorney. So you know that's how the little games are played.
Yeah.
And Bobby Sanchez is. Go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say, Albert. But just as an aside, Albert Hatchett was the first trial I covered. I worked for a paper called the Spinal Column newspaper in Union Lake, and I covered the prosecutor's office. And Albert Hatchett was the defense attorney for one of the people accused of murder. And that guy was like, it was like watching Shakespeare in the courtroom. He was so graceful and so eloquent and so dynamic. It was like watching a show. It was just phenomenal.
So Edward asked about the best and worst times under Coleman Young. Do you have any particular incidents
the worst times under Coleman Young was when you can go downtown and half the shit, nothing. I lived downtown since I came back to the city. Nothing. But the mayor used to say, you know, he said, "I'm a caretaker. I'm going to hold it together." He said, somebody 20 years from now is going to have the balls to reinvest in downtown. Right now, they don't have the balls. He was talking about Henry Ford and Max Fisher, those folks. He said they didn't have the balls. He said, but somebody's going to come. And somebody did.
Dan Gilbert.
The best of times is when they was fighting for City Airport. And that's when we let that get away, because if that City Airport now, see, they really destroyed some viable neighborhoods to make that airport work. The runways was too small for Southwest. Southwest came in, and the people that neglected their loved ones at this cemetery did not want, all of a sudden, "Oh, you can't remove the fuckers." The mayor say, "We'll give you more money. We'll pay for them to be removed to wherever you at, etc." They didn't want it. He said on 10 Mile Road, people fought for 10 years or 20 years for 696 not to be built. And guess what? At the end of the day, there was a cemetery there, and they bought them out, and they moved all their loved ones out of there. But the best story was the city council was divided over whether or not to approve the runways for Southwest, and it looked like it was going to not pass. And the night before the vote, the late Jack Kelly, who was a big guy who liked to drink and used to hang out with Billy Martin and and those others who you like to drink, went and met the mayor at the Manugian.
Mm-hmm.
They drank and drank. Come back to the city council to vote. It's 500 people, standing room only. The vote came down to 4-4. The Jack Kelly said, "How you vote, nay or yay?" He voted nay, yay. They had to escort him out because people was pissed that had came there from Warren and other places that didn't want the airport. It was in the same shape as Midway, and when Midway expanded, Midway just turned that whole area around. Here, Southwest said, "I can't stay." They went to Metro, and then Pro Air came. They said basically they flying with empty planes because they couldn't have a full plane. So yeah.
I flew out all those. I flew out of Southwest, flew with Pro Air. When I DC, there were cheap flights out of Baltimore to Detroit City Airport. The problem was they had limited number of planes, and sometimes if they didn't have enough people on the Detroit plane, they would divert it for another flight. And I remember spending the night overnight in Baltimore because the next plane wasn't coming till the morning.
Right.
But it just wasn't. It never worked out.
But I tried to tell Kwame and Kwame in the book and as Dennis Archer to try to tell Kwame when they was doing that Gary Brown trial.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Coleman Young said never go to, never answer a subpoena, never go to the court, never talk to the feds, let them come for you. And he did all the wrong things. Even when I saw Gary Brown one night at a bar, me and him was in the Marine Corps.
Right.
So we had a little, and he was telling me, man, he said, all the shit I really know about Kwame, he said, all I want is my pension and retire at my highest rank.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he wanted. I go back and tell the mayor and his folks, that's Kwame Kilpatrick, said, fuck Gary Brown. So this is what, at the end, Gary Brown fucked the city, which he should have. And with everything he got, he should have got.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Duckett. Thank you, Deborah. Bobby Sanchez, been going back to what kind of cigarettes they were. Thank you, Bobby. He's living in that moment. Hello to Wood Dog, our old friend Wood Dog. I guess I think you kind of touched on it, Adolph, and one of our viewers also. I think a lot of people went through that office of Coleman Young, Kwame Kilpatrick, Dennis Archer, whoever. Tell us some of your experiences with maybe some celebrities of Detroit or some of the national politicians that you had.
But I'll tell you, do you know who Robert Mugabe is?
I do.
Robert Mugabe, for those who don't know him, was a freedom fighter in the 60s in Rhodesia.
Right.
He drove out Ian Smith and their apartheid government. Now became president. First year or two, the guy was what everybody wanted. Then the guy turned into a dictator, basically, doing all kind of crazy things, stayed in power forever before he died. But anyway, he came to Detroit to visit the mayor, and the mayor had him wait. And somebody told that asked the mayor later, man, why you know who Mugabe is? And he said, yeah, why? He said, you had him wait. And he said, well, he ain't in Zimbabwe. he right here. But you know,
not the boxer though, right? That's a different Robert
yeah,
Mugabe.
yeah.
There was a boxer by that name too, right?
The same way he did Jim Blanchard. He really let Jim Blanchard. He really fell out with Blanchard, and his words was Blanchard had no balls. You know, you were born with them. You can't grow them. You know.
What about Archer? Did you work with Archer much?
Well, I didn't work with Archer. I wrote a ton of shit on Archer when the Detroit News had their own Detroit section. Remember that?
Right, sure.
Or was you there or you left?
What year was that?
Yeah, that's the 90s.
90s. I was till 95. I was there.
I think you left. I think you left.
95.
Yeah, I think you left because it's all the way up to 2001. We wrote. Yeah, Archer hated me. Basically, he said I had a poison pen. I fucked with him a lot. Now I was in his office. I met with him, and I tell this story. I met with Coleman Young in his office. He had a lot of books, history books, and all kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Archer had a lot of books and shit. Kwame had nothing. He had pictures. His administration told a story through pictures. I'm not saying Kwame wasn't smart, but they were in another world.
So they're two different people. I mean, you're talking about a Supreme Court justice in the state of Michigan.
Well, if it wasn't Coleman, and people think Coleman Young was mad at Archer. He said Archer is part of my family. He ran my second campaign. I made him for how he got made. I helped him get on the Supreme Court. The only time he was pissed at Archer is when the casinos came down, and the mayor was part of a group to get a casino, and Archer just fucked everybody that was local. Don Barton, Coleman Young, and that's the only time the mayor said any fucking thing about him. He said he even got his wife over at 36th District Court. He said, and this son of a bitch won't even return my calls. But that's Archer. Archer was a different kind of mayor. He had a different kind of group of people working for him. They was Teflon. They was marshmallows.
It seemed like
folks. What?
It seemed like Archer, and you can give me your opinion on this. I always felt like he had potential for greatness, and he just kind of fizzled out, and he was never.
He had no balls. You remember Basil Brown, right?
Yeah. Senator
Basil Brown was a state senator, a guy that looked white, but he was black. But he's black, and he used to do things, drink, drive, whatever.
Right.
He got set up by Frank Kelly with a prostitute.
Right.
You know, and he was forced to resign. That's how Virgil Smith, the old man, won his seat.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, went all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court. Dennis Archer recused himself, saying, I was at a fundraiser once and I saw Basil Brown. He didn't speak to him. He didn't know him.
Right.
But the Supreme Court overturned his conviction and threw out, said he was entrapped. But his career was fucked. That was Coleman Young, a roommate up in Lansing.
Oh, really?
Yes. And Roger Craig. I don't know some of these people I'm naming. You know, people don't know who they are. You have to look them up in a book.
Well, that's a good idea.
I have a quick story, if I could interject there. When I was on strike, I would chase Archer down at parties and stuff like that, and I would tell him, "Look, you have to do what the mayor in San Francisco did." He said, when the San Francisco Chronicle was on strike, the mayor told the papers, "I'll protect your property, but I'm not opening the gates for the scabs." And to let people push people away. Archer had the fucking gang squad coming out when we were blocking the building sometimes. And I told Archer, I said, you've got to stop this. And he said, no, I got to obey the law. I said, they're breaking the law. Then I told Coleman Young, I saw Coleman Young, he was in a wheelchair by then, over in 96. And I said, look, you got to speak out against Archer. I said, he's screwing our strike. And he said, oh, we're trying to have unity for the Clinton election. I don't want to say anything. He goes, I don't care for that motherfucker. But Coleman did speak out a couple of weeks later about Archer and about
yeah.
Couple quick questions, Edward All. Do you remember Coleman Young saying never give up on the water board? And Mr. Duck is asking, were you with the mayor during the Krugerrand scandal? And Ken Weiner?
That's Krugerrand. That was some shit. You know, that was a little before my time. The water, mayor was a walking history book. He said that the suburbs been trying to get the fucking water since the early 50s. So it was nothing new. You know, Detroit used the water to help build 57 communities. So Detroit used the water to build the Mackinac Bridge. That's where all the money came from. At the time, Detroit was the powerhouse, financial-wise. And so it was nothing new. They was just really putting the pressure on the mayor. In 1980, like the city was going to go bankrupt, but he called in the guy that took over New York City when they was going bankrupt, and with that vote, that's when you had 60-70% of voters went out and passed the only city in America to pass a tax on themselves. Said and some people saying, well, it shouldn't have been. Look, should have let them go bankrupt, and well, that's here or there. If you wasn't there, you would know. And that same year where they had the Pole Town, that was another one of his.
Well, we take a break and we'll come back. We've got a lot more to talk about. This is great and fascinating stuff. I think people love the history of Detroit. So
the book is A Front Row Seat by Adolph Mongo.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Okay, we're back.
All right, we're back. I have a question. Kwame Kilpatrick, okay, you worked with him and you talked a lot about that in a previous show. In your opinion, could Kwame have been one of the great mayors of Detroit, or was he not really capable? And what brought him down besides the obvious criminal cases?
His daddy and his mother, but his mother, and I like Carolyn Kilpatrick. She was all right. I liked her personally. They got him out of everything he ever, all the trouble that he ever got into. They were there. Bernard Kilpatrick, they were a little powerhouse couple when they were together, and still had a lot of power separately. And he was just entitled. He didn't listen to old guard telling him, you got to have a little seasoned people and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he brought in a lot of friends from college and stuff. That's good, but they can't be the ones that's running everything, especially people that's not from the city and don't know the politics. Mm-hmm. You got to know the politics. And he thought that he can just get up there and just talk his way out of shit. People didn't fall for that.
Was he a good mayor in the time before he got in trouble, or was he still missing the mark?
He missed the mark from the first day. He got in. Yeah, he went on the campaign. I campaigned against him. I was with Gil Hill, even though Gil didn't really want to run for mayor, but he was pushed into it. And
Who
when
pushed him?
what
Who was pushing Gil?
the Greeks,
Oh,
the
really?
late Ed Cazares, my friend
The
Jim
Casinos?
Pappas. Yeah, those are the people behind Gil Hill, and Gil Hill ran. And we thought we could beat him, and he won. They ran a good campaign, and so he got to be mayor, but he started off all fucking wrong.
So can I get a couple of comments, Adolph? And I want you to tell the viewers after I finish with this comments how you ended up with Kwame Kilpatrick and how that worked out. But there's Day. It's interesting. Teresa and I were talking about Day in the last couple of days. We're glad to see you, Day. I thought Kwame was rubbish. Dorian Denard, thank you for explaining it. From Edward. Adolph, is another question.
He screwed up a lot of shit, and not all of it was fucked up, but I was writing op-ed pieces against him, talking about him, calling him crybaby, etc. I'm on record. I'm not for him. They couldn't stand me, but my phone rang one night, and it was him, and he wanted to meet, and I was like, no, I don't want to meet.
So you're working. You don't have a client that's running for mayor at this time, right? You're done. The elections are over. Tell us how that worked.
Yeah, election is over. He was getting in trouble. So it brought me on. And when I walked into his office on the 11th floor, if looks could kill, but hey, y'all won, and here I'm at. So listen.
We didn't have any questions for you. He didn't interview you. He didn't say, Adolph, I want to know if you can do this.
I need your help. And then you know what? I came to his rescue.
What was your impression when you talked? Did you think he was being when you first started talking to him? Was he being a straight shooter? You were saying
he was worried. It was no bullshit.
So he was in trouble and he's looking for help.
Yeah. And I've been around a lot of politicians, and I know when they bullshit or not bullshit. It's like when I work with Jeffrey Feiger. Feiger could be one that he can be the biggest bullshit in the world, but when he was serious, because he did not play around. And I've never seen
from Oak Park too, right?
But
was he from Oak Park? Jeffrey
Feiger? He went to Oak Park, yeah. And so so I know, and I've been around and counsel people. I had a client, the late Joanne Watson. She was nothing but serious, and I tried to get her to run for mayor. She would have been a great mayor. Unfortunately, well, she's no longer with us. But yeah, Kwame was. He was in a serious mood.
How about did you talk about in the book about running the Coleman Young II campaign? Does that come up at all, or?
No. But I can tell you about Coleman Young II. I was working for the mayor when that came out. It's supposed to have been a scandal. Well, he's 66 years old. He got a love child, and people was like, "Oh man!" And Coleman Jr., as I call him, asked me to run his campaign. Listen, I respected the hell out of his mayor. Mayor helped me, and I had a great relationship most of the time with him. And I said, I didn't think you can win, but one thing we made Duggan spend all his money.
Huh.
And because Duggan, I have to give him credit, did not take it for granted that he could. He figured he might be able to lose to Coleman Young,
Right.
and Coleman, who was a state senator and he was had been a state rep, used this as a stepping stone to be on the council, which he ran citywide, and that's a good position for him.
Mm-hmm.
So Tamari has a question about Dennis Archer and his Skull and Bones, Black Skull and Bones crew. Are you familiar with that? And
no, but I know people are pissed on how he did Don Barton. To say that Don Barton wasn't qualified to have a casino, and Don Barton had a casino in Gary, Gary, Indiana, had a casino in Las Vegas, had casinos in Mississippi. So why wasn't he qualified? Because Dennis Archer was jealous of Don Barton, saying that he got enough money. And how the fuck he wasn't counting MGM money?
Huh.
MGM got enough money. All these folks got enough money, if you want to put it like that.
Sure. So here's a question you don't probably have any answer to, because I know you're, not really a drinker or anything. But where would Coleman Young go to drink? If you can answer that, if you have any.
I'll tell you this story. Listen, there's a lot of stories. I could have had a 510,000 page book. We were in Flood's Bar and Grill. That was a hangout then for all the political folks and stuff. And I was there with my brother Larry, who owns Cafe de Mongo's. He talked a lot of shit, and he was talking plenty shit to the folks that didn't like Coleman Young. They hate Coleman Young, and they just talking stuff. I see Larry go somewhere. He went and got on a payphone. About 20 minutes later, here come Coleman Young and Floods.
Oh wow!
These folks, they you can hear pin drop in this place. One by one, they were sliding away, and the mayor sat down, and Larry said, "Nah, here he is. Here's the mayor. Here's the mayor. Talk all this shit." And nobody said anything.
Uh-huh.
And the mayor ordered him a scotch on the rocks, and he sat there, smoked a cigarette, and he was cool.
So the book's not available yet, Adolph. You're getting. We had a question about.
I'll let you know when it's available. But this is at one time before I thought I was going to have a book finished, and I didn't. I just wanted to make sure that I'm finished.
So we're just putting the information out there. You're finalizing it. You're finalizing a publisher, and it should be out.
Yeah, it'll be out before the end of the year.
Do you have a publisher at this point, or are you going to self-publish?
Well, listen, I got some options and stuff. There's always some negatives when you do either publish or self-publish.
Right.
You got to do it right. I know some folks that self-publish and been very successful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And most of the time not. And then some people get published by a publishing company, and boom. It's like the mayor autobiography, he hated it. He said, Bob Bird went and got a sports writer who had written Hank Aaron biography. I read the galleys before they published it, and he said, this is some shit. He said,
So
there's a question about. Go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
All right, I was just saying. So Coleman didn't like it. Who was the sports writer?
Hold for a second. I'll tell you.
So we have a couple of. He stepped away. We want to talk about the bus situation. We're not able to do that tonight, or the budget. A couple other issues that people brought up, but I'll write them down and we can talk about them either Friday or Saturday.
Lonnie Wheeler.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, how would you, having seen all these mayors before, how would you grade Duggan?
Duggan, Duggan, I put him on and this is not a negative. I put him on a leprechaun suit because he was lucky than a fuck. And Duggan, he parachuted on Fantasy Island, and he lived 12 years the life of a big city mayor, and he knew just what buttons to pull and do what he needed to do. Because when you got bankruptcy, just got rid of all the bills, got rid of the pension problems, listen, the city workers couldn't afford to strike. Yeah. So Coleman Young had to deal with all this shit. He had to deal with a police department that I think when I came, it might have been 4,000 police officers. But the first thing when you cutting a budget like Detroit, who goes first, Jim? Police.
The police.
Police and fire.
Yes.
It's something that you don't want to do, but that's where you start at, So the man, he was a poker player, he'd be a billionaire because he knew how to. He kept this city afloat. He stopped another riot in '75 and when Malice Green was
1993.
Yeah, so he don't get the credit for that, but he did. He went up. A teenager got shot on Livernois. The store owner said he was trying to break into a car, shot him in the back, killed him, and got out on a $50 bond. And the people over that way went berserk. They wanted to start burning down places. He came out there, told them, he said, all you motherfuckers got to go home. And he got the police department. He said he told me later, he never thought he would use the police department like he used that night and the next 2 days, where they stopped all of that because they was about to burn down Livernois again.
Yeah.
But the mayor was right there.
And I'm not sure it was 93. It may have been 92. Ira's out there, and Ira might be able to fix that for him. We appreciate you tuning in tonight, Ira, and your comments. 404 Menace Race Car, thank you. You made it clear how you feel about the former mayor. Thanks for your comment.
Did Carlita beat up a Strawberry? No. They had the parties. There was parties there. It wasn't Kwame parties. His father had parties and stuff. But no, if they knew the mayor ex-wife, the ex-mayor ex-wife, Carlita, she wasn't that type of woman. She would have never came and jumped on. I know some women that went there and beat up some asses, including the mayor's ass, but that wasn't her. And and all these folks saying it's a conspiracy. Well, it had to be a hell of a conspiracy. But hey, the street says the person the people that killed her, that some of them in jail. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Thank you, Kenneth. There's some unusual stuff going on there during that administration, but it's unlikely that he would have a party, where his wife could access it. He went to other places like North Carolina and
all kind of places that But
I'm talking about.
But as I finished the book, I realized that, man, I had a ton of stuff dealing with different political folks, judges, Congress people, etc.
Celebrities.
Put in, that's unfortunate, but you can only do so much.
Entertainment people? Did entertainment people like to hang out with Kwame? They like to hang out with Coleman Young? Did the Motown people come around Coleman Young?
Well, Coleman Young, the only time he really got with the Motown folks is when he asked Berry Gordy to write a song about Detroit. We had a program called Do It in Detroit, and the media made fun of it. Do this, do that, but those the kind of programs work. He had a program called Keep Detroit Clean. And people wasn't throwing garbage out of cars and all this other stuff. People, those were good programs, and but it was so much other stuff that happened, especially when they had the schoolgirl rapes in the 80s, and the mayor called everybody together, block clubs, corporate, Detroit, Edison, Mishcon, you name it, he had them there. And I tell you, they had these lights on early in the morning on the cars and stuff. And I don't know how many people they arrested, and those school girl rapes didn't stop rapes, but it stopped that,
So I think you hit on that, but how did he feel about turning the police? He came in to reform the police department, and
he said he know what happens when they burn a city down, and the people that get hurt is the black folks that live in that neighborhood. And it's like when the Earl Flynn's and the BKs tried to take over. He said, I got the biggest and the baddest gang in Detroit. They wear blue uniforms with silver badges, and I'm going to kick these folks' ass. And now, I'm not saying you don't have gangs, but you don't have a grandfather that was in the BKs and his grandson is in the BKs. It ain't like the Bloods and the Crips where they pass down that shit generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
But,
so that was the mid 70s, right? 73 to 78, somewhere in that time frame. 74.
So the mayor was the baddest man on the block. The gang squad. I could have just wrote a book on the gang squad, and I didn't even talk about it. And I rode with them for a week under Benny Napoleon, and man, they did not play around. And these little so-called gangsters that walk around, when they got picked up and stuff, they cried and pissed on themselves like little babies. So,
and that was tough. The Southwest was tough then, and Ira could probably tell us stories about the gang squad in the Southwest. Yes. He was right. He was right smack in the middle of it. So thank you, Hazel Park and Jill Sheridan. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, and I'll end on this to the gang squad. And I didn't go. There was while I was riding with them, they went and raided a house because they was looking for somebody who shot at 2 police cars, uniform cars. So they all wore uniforms. So they you don't shoot at a uniformed cop. Anyway, they picked up all these people. One of the men that they had was in handcuffs. He saw me. He said, "Mongo, you 5-0? You 5-0?" So wait a minute. I was like, they put him in the car, and one of the gang squad officers came to me and said, "You know him?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We wasn't looking for him." He said, "I tell you what, I'm going to drive around the block, a couple blocks, and I'm going to let him go." I said, okay. Before I even got back to my office, my mother was calling saying one of her neighbors said, "I didn't know he was a police officer." It's like, yeah. So,
tell people the name of the book again, Adolph, and when you think it'll be available, and thank everybody.
I'll let you know when it's coming out.
Can we say that describe it as finished or in the editing stage or still working on
editing stage?
Editing stage. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, I think it'd be a great book. Look forward to reading something like that. I think it'll be a lot of interesting. Is there anything scandalous? Anything scandalous in there?
Oh well, I'll tell some shit. I guess some people are gonna be mad at me. That's all part of it. I don't give a fuck. And you're right. When the police is scared, they did call the gang squad.
Gang squad, boy, that was
no question. Well, we'll be back on Friday. Thanks for letting me
all right,
talk a little bit about it. you know, and some of what we talked about is in the book, and some is not. You know.
You got a cover yet, or is that still?
Well, you know, I got something.
Got some ideas.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, look forward to it. It sounds like a great book.
Yeah, he talked about it on another podcast, Kenneth. That's why we made him come on and talk about it on this show tonight.
Right. So. He gave the exclusive to the other podcast.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I owe Charlie one. He gave me a chapter.
Okay. Yeah. We should play that. Or, you know, sometime we should play that little exchange when Charlie came on our show.
To Mary was Mike Cox at the party.
Tucker Carlson boyfriend.
Yeah, we should replay that. I'll edit it. We'll play it one day.
Well, anyway, we'll be back Friday, and thank you.
All right.